Daf Yud Aleph Amud Aleph, 6 lines from the top. Continuing on with the discussion about mezuzah. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in the Baraisa Bisharecha. The Torah says that you have to write the mezuzah. It has to be on the mezuzah. Says Beisecha Bisharecha. Echad Sharei Batim Ve'achad Sharei Chatzeres. That means that there is a chiyuv of the mezuzah. It says that therefore there's a chiyuv of the mezuzah, whether it's the Sharei Batim, the gates of the houses, Ve'achad Sharei Chatzeres, or the Chatzer courtyard, Ve'achad Sharei Medinais, or whether it's a province, Ve'achad Sharei Ayarais, or the gates of the cities, Yesh Bem Chayvas Mitzvah L'Makam. They have a mitzvah, a chiyuv, a mitzvah of a mezuzah to the Malkim, to Rabbeinu Shalom, Mishum Shenemer, Uchsavtam al mezuzahis Beisecha uvish arecha. You should write them on the mezuzah Beisecha uvish arecha. The Mirei explains, it says a B'loshen Rabim. Since it says a B'loshen Rabim, therefore, we include houses need a mezuzah, the gate to Chatzeres, courtyards. Houses lead into a central courtyard. The gate to the Chatzer requires a mezuzah as well. As the Taisus Yishanim speaks out, that since this is a Chatzer where there are houses inside, therefore this is considered to be a malkam of a dir, of a dwelling. So that there's in the Meforshim and the Rishonim there's somewhat of a dispute of precisely what does that mean. Does that mean because the Chatzeres themselves are considered to be a dira because they have houses that open into them, it's also considered to be a dira, it's a place of living, or because it leads to the houses where people live. But Kolpanim, Chatzeres need a mezuzah. The gates of the Chatzeres need a mezuzah, Sharei Medinais, or in the provinces. And Rashi explains that you have certain provinces surrounded by mountains or by forests. You can't access it without with an entranceway. The entranceway that leads to this, there is a requirement mezuzah. Or in cities, if cities have walls around them and they have the gate, the entrance to the cities. So all of these require mezuzah. He said, when you have the gates of the city, of the town of Mechuzah, why didn't the Rabbanan require a mezuzah on this shar? It's a shar of the town, of the city, it should require a mezuzah. More answers, Hanu chizuk lakra dekuvehu Dovid. That is not made for an entrance to the city. It's made only to support, it's made as an archway to support the tower that rests above it. So therefore, it's not an entrance to the city per se. Well, the Akra the Kuvi itself, it's a tower, it should require a mezuzah. That itself should require a mezuzah, and therefore the shar that leads to the stairway that leads to this tower should also require a mezuzah. Why should the tower require mezuzah? Because that's where the person in charge of the prison, that's where he lives. And that in itself should be therefore considered a base dir. The hotline because of the Brisa basic kanesses sheish ba base dir l'chazan kanesses. If you have a shul that has also a dwelling for the shamas that's there that takes care of the shul, chayav some mezuzahs, chayav mezuzah. Since it has the dira of the shamas of the chazan, it requires a mezuzah. Here also, the guard or the warden that stays there in the tower, therefore should be required mezuzah. Elamar Abaya, therefore Abaya says there's a different reason. There's a different reason that it didn't require mezuzah. Mishum sakana, because of the sakana that's involved. The Sanya we learned in the Brisa, mezuzah yachid nivdekes pamayim b'shavua. A mezuzah of an individual, you have to check the mezuzahs twice every 7 years. Every 3.5 years, according to Chaim. It has to be checked. V'shel rabim pamayim b'yovel. If it's for the public, the chamor mekel, and it said only twice in a yovel, every 50 years. So in the 50-year cycle of the Yovel, that's when it has to be checked. Amar Rav Yehuda said, Maisa ba'artovin. There was a Maisa with a certain artovin. There was a Maisa with artovin. Is that Rashi says is that he was given that name? Was this his name, or was it a profession that he was involved with? But Al Kopanim, there was a Maisa with his artovin. that he was examining the mezuzahs on the upper marketplace of Tziparim. And a Goyish officer saw him, and he thought he was engaged in witchcraft, and he fined him 1,000 zuz. So you see, therefore, it's a sakana. Therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says, for the Rabbim, he said there's no set time for the B'dik of the Rabbim. Therefore, he says that we have to determine what is feasible. Al Kolpanim, we see that there's a sakana that the Nachrim might suspect of Kishuv. Therefore, he said in the case that we were talking about by Mechuzah, the reason there was no mezuzah was because they would be suspected of kishuv, of witchcraft, and it would be sakana. That's why it didn't have. Really, it would be required, but because of that, they didn't require it. So as a side point, well, why should there have been the sakana in this mice over there, with this artavin, that he was baidik the mezuzah, he was doing a mitzvah, he was checking the mezuzah, and we have a klal that shluchim mitzvah are not nizakin, they're not haram. More answers where there is kavua zeka, where it's common, it's likely to have a damage over there. So there you can't rely on that. And unusual mitzvah are not nizaikin, something that would not be anticipated. But if it's a dangerous place, you can't rely on that. They could be harmed. Where do we see that? It says Vayomer Shmuel ech elach v'shama shol v'hargani. When Shmuel Hamelach, the Rebbeinu Shalom, asked him to be Meshach Dovid as the king, he said, "How can I go? Shmuel hears about this; he'll kill me." Vayamra Hashem eglas bakar tikach beyadecha v'amatlis b'ach l'Hashem b'asi. They'll make an excuse. Take the cattle, and you'll say that you take the calf and you're bringing it to be makrid as a korban, and therefore he won't suspect you. But you see that Shmuel said that it's dangerous. Now, even though he was going for a mitzvah to be Meshach Dovid HaMelech, he still had to be concerned and had to have this ruse so that he would not be endangered by Sholem Melech. Tani Rav Kana coming to Rav Yehuda. He said, Beis HaTeven, a storehouse for straw, or Beis HaBokar, a barn, or Beis HaEitzim, a storehouse for wood, or Beis HaOitzres, or general storage houses, where you have the storehouse for wine and oil and grain, etc. Paturim min mezuzah. All of these cases, these structures are patur min mezuzah. Mipnei shehanoshim ne'oisas behem, because the women use them, so they're patur mezuzah. Umay ne'oisas. What does it mean, noshim ne'oisas? What does it mean, ne'oisas? He says, reichsis, because they bathe over there, they wash over there, therefore it's a place that's not a dignified place, and therefore they're patur from mezuzah. That's why it's a patur from mezuzah. Amrle Rav Yehuda says, meaning you're saying you're patur only because the noshim and the isis, and therefore it's not a place that's fit for mezuzah. Amrle Rav Yehuda, taima, you're saying the time of the right is because they bathe over there. Stama chayavin, but if not for that, in Stam, if they didn't bathe there, you'd say that these storehouses, these warehouses would be chayav. We learned the brisa, reves bakar patur min mezuzah. We learned that a barn is patur from mezuzah, that a stable for the animals is patur from mezuzah. So therefore, the washing isn't the patur; they're patur in any event of patur. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda says a different pshat. He says, Elamayne oises. What does it mean? It doesn't mean reichsis. It doesn't mean washing. It means miskashtes. They adorn themselves. They perfume. They put makeup, etc. over there. And it means just the opposite. Af al pish hanoshim miskashes behem patur. Even though they're miskashes, they're still pot. Meaning, the fact that they use that, they adorn themselves there, therefore you might say, is considered to be personal use for people, for the women, and it should be chayv and mezuzah. Nevertheless, no. We say the fact that it's used for these other purposes, then the main uses for these other purposes, they're patur from mezuzah. So that's how Rabbi Yehuda learned. Amrli Rav Kana says, Usha noshim biskash behem paturim. You're saying where the women are miskash, they adorn themselves, the potter, that's not of a personal use, it's not enough of a personal use to be mechayiv mezuzah. We learned in the brisa, Revis Bakr Patur Mina Mezuzah, the stable is potter from mezuzah, but Vishad Noshim miskashas ba chayeves b'mezuzah, but if they adorn themselves, it's chayiv mezuzah. So you see clearly that this brisa holds that Noshim miskashas are chayiv mezuzah. So how do you, Rav Yehuda, understand it? You that learned in the previous brisa that it means that even though they're miskashis, they're potter, what must you say? Miskashis tanoi. You must say that whether the miskashis, whether that's mechayiv and mezuzah or not, is a machlokes tanoi. So you yourself also have to agree that there is a machlokes over here. So l'didi nami is dama tanoi. So he said that Rav Kahana said that, well, according to me, yes, there's also machlokes tanoi. It's not by noshim miskashis. That's not what it is. The machlokes is whether a stama, a regular, ordinary, or warehouse is chayiv or potter mezuzah. So therefore, he will understand it that way. The Sanya. So we see where they have this other brisa, where we have this machlokes, and we'll see how Rav Kahana and Rav Yehuda understand it. The Sanya we learn in the brisa, Beischo. You have to write a mezuzah on your house. Beischo miyuchadlov means that it's a house that is specifically a house that it's for a human dwelling. So prat lebeis hatevan, lebeis habak, lebeis eitz, and lebeis oitzers. So that excludes all these types of storehouses and warehouses shepatum min mezuzah, that they're potter from mezuzah. V'yesh mechayvim, but some say that these storehouses are chayv. Be'emes amru l'maisa, they said in truth, meaning that this is the halacha. Be'emes amru beis hakisei, beis haburski, if it's a bathroom or beis haburski where they tan the skins of leather, or beis hamerchat, or beis hatvila, or a place where they're toival, v'shanoshim ne'oises behem, where the women use them petura min hamezuzah. They're potter min hamezuzah. So now, how will Rav Yehuda and Rav Kahana interpret this? Rav Kahana mataras l'tamei, he explains it as follows. Rav Yehuda mataras l'tamei, he explains it according to his reasoning. Rav Kahana mataras l'tamei, Rav Kahana explains it according to his reasoning as follows. Beisecho, it says that you're right, the mezuzah beisecho, on the mezuzah of your house, beisecho miyuchdlach. It has to be for humans. All these cases are potter. That's only bestam. But v'yesh mechayim bestam. That, however, some say that no bestam, you are chayim. When do they say you're potter b'emes amru? When they said, what is halacha? When do they say that you're potter? Or that's only a beis hakisa, a beis hapurki, a beis hameres, a beis hatfila, v'shanashim, now it's spam, and that the woman makes use of. Well, my neoises, and what does neoises mean? According to Rav Kahana, means reichseis, but Torah min mezuzah. Then they're potter min mezuzah, meaning he's l'tamei. He learns at Rav Kahana l'tamei that there's a machlokes by a stam warehouse, storage house. That's machlokes. But if there's a use over there that is degrading, so therefore even the man domer who says by a stam warehouse you're chayev, he'll say that it's potter. And it says neoisis. According to him, what does neoisis mean? Reichseis. That's the same darga as a beis hatfila, as a beis hamerchat that the women wash over there. That's also potter. Correct the Gemara, if you're interpreting Noesis as Reichseis in Ha'i Hachi Hainu Merchatz, well then that's the same thing as a bathhouse. So why would it say two cases? The more answer is Ashmina Merchatz the Rabbim, Ashmina Merchatz the Yochid. We give us two types of a Merchatz. Is a public bathhouse and a private one. The Salkadai Chamina might have said, Merchatz the Rabbim the Nofish Zuhumha. I might have thought that a public bathhouse, which has a lot of uses in frequent use, and therefore there's a lot of odors over there, foul odors, therefore it's not dignified as potter min mezuzah. Aval Merchatz the Yochin, but a Merchatz the Yochin the Nofish Zuhumha, which doesn't have that degree of use and odor, I might say, Enel Chayiv mezuzah. I might think you're Chayiv, Kemash Melan. Rav Yehuda mataras l'tamei hachigetan. Beisecha, your house. Beisecha meyuchad lach, a house that's used for humans. Prat lebesa tevin lebesa bakar lebesa itzim lebesa haitzra ishabatur min mezuzah. These storehouses, these warehouses, these barns are potter from mezuzah. I feel miskashtos, even if women use it, even if they adorn themselves over there, even if they use it for makeup, etc. Even with that human use, that's not considered a primary use for humans, and therefore even there you're potter. But some say with miskashtos, no, that is enough to say that it's considered beisacha and you're chayiv. Awal stam devra kol potter, but where it's not used by one where the not miskashtos, but stam, a storage house, everyone agrees that you're potter. Be'emes Amru, they said, Be'emes, that a besa kisei, a besa bursaki, a tannery, besa mirachas, a besa tefillah, af al pishan noshim miskashas behem, there, even if the women use it, adorn themselves, peturim min hamezuzah, they're potter min hamezuzah, not for a different reason. Not because it's not used by humans, but over there they're potter because mishum denafir zuma, because these are places where it has a foul odor, it's not dignified for a mezuzah, and therefore these cases afilu miskashas peturim min mezuzah.